So recently I did a part one to my addiction story, and I kept thinking, what am I going to do for my second video? Or my part two. I don't know how I'm going to incorporate things, but this is what I came up with, kind of like a clean with me, get to know me and my recovery journey. I do want to say that I'm extremely nervous. I have re recorded this like 100 times for the past 2 days. I really struggle with being embarrassed and feeling a little ashamed. Even though I love my story and I'm learning to love every part of my life story. But all in all, my recovery story is my favorite story. So I need to be proud of my story, even though I've done things that I'm not proud of. So, one question I get a lot is, how did you get on drugs? Like, you don't look like someone who would be on drugs. And so, I guess here's my answer to all of that. So in 2010, I was introduced to Percocets, and not knowing that I had a addictive personality, I I liked the high that it gave me, and I was doing Percocets for like a year, maybe 2 years, actually, 2 years from 2010 to 2012. But it wasn't nothing like I gotta have it. Like, if somebody had them, they had them. If they didn't, they didn't, and life went on. So if 6 months or more went by and I didn't have them, I just didn't have them. So 2012, I ended up going through a divorce, which was extremely heartbreaking and devastating for me, and not knowing how to cope through the hurts and pains of going through that divorce, and not knowing how to manage my emotions and stuff like that. Um, I was already hearing about heroin from people I was around. So it was kind of in the back of my head for a little while, like, I wonder what that's about, but I didn't know anything about drugs or anything like that. So in 2012, when I was looking for Percocets, I couldn't find any. And so that thought that was in the back of my head, like, let me try this. And so I tried it. And from that moment forward, I was addicted. So I struggled with heroin from 2012 to 2013, and then I wanted to get clean. Now, me not knowing too much about drugs, I had no idea what withdrawals was. So there was times I was like, "Oh, I'm about to just quit." And I had no idea why I was like so sick. Like, I would go to the hospital and everything until one day I was in a hospital room, not knowing why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I ended up Googling, some stuff. And that's how I found out that I was actually going through withdrawals. So I knew, like, crap, I'm going to have to do this just to feel normal and to be able to, go throughout my day. So I struggled with that from 2012 to 2013. When 2013 came around, I ended up getting clean from 2013 to 2016. So I was clean for 3 years. And then I met this older guy who was a neighbor of mine. And through conversation, he learned that I was in recovery and I was 3 years clean. Me not knowing that he was a heroin addict, moving forward, he had started bringing me like Percocets all the time. And then that moved to him bringing me heroin all the time. And just like that, I relapsed after 3 years. So 2016, I was like back on heroin. I was in such a dark place. I was in such a dark place to where I ended up moving that 63-year-old man into my apartment with me and my sons. And the life that I was living, sometimes when I look back on those days, it really makes me cringe because the whole lifestyle that I was living, it's just so not me. It was so dark, and it's just so sad, even looking back on those days. One memory I have from that part of my life, is I remember it was like a snowstorm. It was snowing so hard. I think it was like January or February or something. And it was like a blizzard outside. And it was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't have anything. So I had put all these layers of clothes on, and I had started walking up the street in all this snow so I could go get something. I didn't have any money. I was doing things that I would not normally do and that I'm not proud of. And so when I was on my way back home, I had my stuff on me and I'm walking back home. And I remember I looked up at the sky and snow was falling like all over my face. And oh my goodness, I do not want to have to delete another recording. I remember looking up at the sky while snow was falling on my face. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, Sade, look what you got yourself into now. It's going to always be like this. How are you going to get yourself out of this? How are you going to manage to get yourself out of this? You're so deep in. There was times I would have like outer body experiences or something, and I would be thinking like, did I really move a 63-year-old man? And is there a 63-year-old really upstairs right now? And I would have to go check, and I'd be like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? So I struggled. So that was my first relapse, and that was from 2016 to 2018. And so I knew when 2018 came, I knew I was ready to put that whole life behind me. It was so dark, and I was just ready to put it behind me. I knew I was going to have to get him out of my apartment. I knew I was in away from me. I knew I was going to have to move from the environment I was in if I wanted to be clean. And so, yeah, I started making stuff happen. I ended up getting back in church real strong, like faithfully, me and the boys and everything. And I ended up rekindling a relationship that I had previously had. And things kind of moved quick. And I moved in with him. And I remember when I moved in with him, he told me, I don't want you to focus on working. I don't want you to focus on none of that kind of stuff. I just want you to focus on your recovery. That's the most important thing. And I got you. Just know that I got you. So that's what I did. Me and the boys, we continued to go to church. Me and the boys, we got baptized together. And I was in therapy twice a week. I was doing like women's recovery. I was doing celebrate recovery. And life was, I noticed life changing for the better. And then God gave me one of my biggest desires that I had wanted for years. And he blessed me with my baby boy, my third son. And I just noticed like life, how drastic life had changed for me. Like everything I had fantasized about when I was in that dark place, literally everything was coming to pass. And so let's see. After all of that, I had Kobe, and then in 2021, life was good. Like I had him in 2020, but life was just like going great. My credit was increasing. I ended up getting a job that I really desired for a long time. And, I had the love of my life. I had my 3 sons. And when I look back on that part of my life, that chapter of my life, I really call that chapter of my life happiness, because it was like I was living out this fantasy I had in my head when I was in such a dark place after that first relapse. So in 2021, right before my 3-year mark of 3 years being clean from 2018 to 2021, right before my 3-year mark, I ended up relapsing, which was kind of bound to happen looking back now, because I had so much unresolved traumas in my life that I wasn't really talking about. Childhood traumas and adult traumas and stuff like that, unhealed. I was still suppressing so many things and not working through them. So yeah, I was bound to relapse, and I did. And it seemed like everything just started falling apart. I had to walk away from that job. I felt so disgusted with myself. I ran through like $10,000 in a matter of months, and I took a big loss with that relapse. I was really disgusted with myself, and here recently, I'm finally within this past year, I'm starting to forgive myself for that. But I've also been working really hard on myself also. So, in 2022, I ended up starting my recovery journey over again for the third time. And I remember when I started it again, I remember looking at myself in the mirror, and I was so determined that I was just done. And I promised myself that that was going to be my kiss goodbye from heroin forever. It's funny I say that as he's coming over and kissing me. But yeah, I promised myself that was going to be a kiss goodbye to heroin forever. And I mean that. And so within this past year, I'm back into therapy and stuff like that, and I do something called EMDR with my therapist, which has been incredibly beneficial to me in my life. If you don't know what EMDR is, you should definitely look it up and just read about it a little bit. It's great for people who has like childhood traumas or any other trauma that we experience throughout life. I got back into like women's recovery, and I do serenity skills, which is like yoga. And I also do something, I do a trauma group, and the trauma group has been like the biggest the biggest part of my life for a year now, actually over a year now. It has been extremely helpful, and I have finally, within this past year, have been, when I say healing, I mean healing. I know a lot of people say that, but through all these things that I'm actively in, even when I'm working, I'm still doing all my classes and stuff. I don't care if I have to leave work or take the day off, because my recovery is top priority, and there's nothing that comes above that, and that's the lifestyle that I will continue to live. So I've been clean now again for a year, and I'm happy, and I'm just so proud. And it's so funny because the 63-year-old that I have moved in, he has, I remember one time he had told me, you're never gonna stop. You love it too much. You're in love with it. You're never gonna stop doing heroin. I already know. I can tell this and this and this. And, looking at myself in this moment right now, and, unfortunately, since then, he has overdosed, and he is no longer here on earth. And I just think it's so crazy, how I was able to, how I'm standing tall right here, after someone told me something like that. And, unfortunately, they're no longer here. But I'm happy that I was able to get through this video because I was extremely nervous. I'm sure there's things I left out. But I think I may just go with this one. I know you guys are thinking like, wow, she is still cleaning. And yes, I'm still cleaning, which come tomorrow, it probably won't even look like this, especially with a toddler, a man, and, kid and stuff like that. So, but it's so funny because people used to ask me all the time, like, why wouldn't you just fire up a blunt? Like, why not just smoke some weed? But I think we all have different things that we kind of go to. And whether it's drinking, it could be love, it could be sex, it could be anything. I think we all sometimes try to numb ourselves with something, or most of us. And so I have not been to church, but God has definitely been a big part of my life still. And, there is some things that I would like to talk about more, kind of get into more details on things, when it comes to traumas and stuff like that. The fact that I'm even here, like I said, is just a blessing to me because, I've struggled with suicide, and I just see like where God has brought me from a lot of the things that I've been through. So I'm just grateful. I'm just really grateful. So we are finishing up here on this video. I hope I didn't leave anything out, but I am pooped.